Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Galit Speaks podcast. I have another guest for you today. Her name is Kekua I'm going to mess this up. Kobashigawa.
Perfect.
Kekua is a best-selling author, a speaker, and the founder of HBIC Development. Healing from her own abusive trauma led her to her desire to become a resource for other women. Her mission now is to help other women find and reconnect to their inner power. I'm so happy to have you here, Kekua.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So, I actually love that you use HBIC because that was something that, so I was in this thing called the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business course, and it was partnering with Tory Burch, and that was the first time I heard HBIC. And the reason I know it is because one of the amazing women, it was like an all-female cohort of these amazing female business owners, and she does laser cut jewelry. It's I Still Love You NYC. If anyone wants to look it up, is Lee NYC. Amazing laser cut jewelry. She made us all HBIC necklaces. So do you want to talk about like what that is and how you decided that that would be your name?
Well, it's from I can't say it originated when I was young, but I learned it when I was young, and it stands for head bitch in charge. And in my healing, as I came to a point where, because I came out, like you mentioned, I had come out of some abusive trauma, and one of the things that was a very hot button for me inside of that relationship was the word bitch. It was, that was kind of, because that was the only boundary I knew. It was really the only boundary I had. You had better not use that word on me. And he would use lots of other phrases and things. But as I came through healing, I came to the realization that people put certain names on you. They put descriptions, they put phrases, they put this verbal control over you because you don't want to be a bitch. Nobody wants to be. That's a bad thing. That's terrible. And in that healing, I realized that was just a word he was putting on me when I was standing up for myself, when I was having boundaries, when I was speaking, my own inner thoughts and feelings and responses to the way that he was acting. That's when these kind of phrases would come about. And I kind of reflected back when I had that moment, and I was like, damn, that's consistent. Always people will put those words on you as a way of trying to put you in a box. And I hit a point where I was like, well, fuck, if being a bitch means that I speak my mind, if it means that I stand up for myself, if it means that I am defensive of the things that are important, if it means all of those things, well, fuck it, I'm a bitch. Yeah. Go ahead. That's my word now. You can't use it against me anymore. It's mine.
I love that. Yeah, I feel the same way about the word bitch because like you, like I was always the assertive woman that was called an aggressive bitch. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. I like being HBIC. I love being the head bitch in charge, Yeah. So I love that you're using that and putting your power behind it. I have also somewhat of a similar feeling to my actual name. So I grew up in a domestic violence situation. So my last name is actually the last name of my father, who was my abuser. And for a very long time, I wanted to change my name, right? I didn't want my accomplishments and the things that I did to be associated with him. And then I came to this realization of like, no, that's my name. And I'm going to make sure that nobody even knows who he is, because they're going to know that name as me and me alone. And when I got married, I didn't take my husband's name. I kept my name because I was like, I've worked so hard to make this belong to me and only me, that I don't want anyone else, I don't want to all of a sudden like use somebody else's name. No, this is me, and everyone's going to know me for my name, and nobody is going to know my abuser because he doesn't matter.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
I love
So
that.
I like that you've taken words and you're giving your own power to it, and it really takes away the power of other people to use it against you.
It really does. Once you realize the entirety of what they're trying to accomplish when they use it, you it takes all the wind out of their sails. Like, you know, go ahead, say it some more. Go ahead. You can't hurt my feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. So I go into difficult topics. So if you could talk a little bit, if you're okay with it, if you talk a little bit about your trauma and how you healed, I would love that.
Well, so I came out of a marriage that was unhappy. That was not a abusive situation at all. It was just we were really not meant for each other, and at the like so many of us, I was too young to know how should you evaluate a relationship. What do you need to actually make it work, right? Because love is not enough. Infatuation is not enough. All of those, platitudes, it doesn't cut it, not for the entire rest of your life. So we didn't know how to evaluate those things. And we were married and we became unhappy because we just weren't right for each other. And there was so much of that relationship that was the very stereotypical, he didn't really want to be present. He wanted to have a job and then come home and like that was it. Like he felt like I should be doing everything that was inside of the house, and kind of like that leave it to beaver type of a life. And again, that
Yeah.
was another thing that we had never talked about ahead of time. So when I had two kids and I was kind of like frazzled and I was the stereotypical, I didn't want to have sex with him. I didn't want to talk to him. I didn't even want to see him most of the time because his presence was just more work for me. So eventually, that came apart. He left. And after that, the relationship that I got into was a very manipulative, incredibly emotionally abusive relationship with a narcissist. And I didn't know anything about that at the time. You see it in TV and in the movies. People don't really treat each other that way. Nobody really
Yeah.
does that, except they
Yeah.
do.
They do.
So
They
I learned how
definitely do. And
it's
worse.
horrible. It's very sad because I understand now that's their way of moving through the trauma that they've experienced. But he knew full well what he was doing. There came a point where his narcissism ratted him out because I can't know things more than him. So as I was learning things and I would confront him and I would say, well, I think you don't realize that you're doing this. I don't think you realize you're having this, I would say, I think you can't possibly know this. You're hurting me. So you couldn't possibly know this, because that would mean that you're doing it on purpose. But because he was a narcissist, he couldn't let me know things that he didn't know. And I know I'm doing that. I don't do it all the time. And so he admitted that he absolutely did those things intentionally. And it was a form of control. And he was good at it. For a thing that I didn't even know people did to each other, he was really good at it. And I went from a woman who seemed, for all intents and purposes, to be strong and confident and all of those things. And I became very withdrawn. I was already insecure. I know this now. That's how he was able to trap me, so to speak.
Yeah.
But I became even more insecure. I became just living on eggshells, this tiny little bit of who I was. And I was fortunate enough to stumble upon personal development, which I had never learned about when I was younger. I had little, glimpses of self-help, self-help is for losers, self-help is for people who are messed up.
Right.
So I had no real concept of what it was. So I had stumbled upon it. And as I started to develop, I can see in hindsight, that was where things started to crumble a little bit, because he saw control waning. He saw the loss happening little
Yeah.
by little, as I became like, whoa, this isn't right. No one else treats me this way. No one else says these things to me. No one else makes me feel the way that you now make me feel. And as I compared those two things, I was like, I think you're the one that's wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. I think you're the one that's wrong. And, of course, as I grew, he spiraled out of control. He became more and more abusive, and he did everything that he could.
Yeah.
He was fucking cruel. Like, bottom line, he was a cruel person. As I came out of that, it was, societally, we're conditioned to carry the shame around that. That was somehow my fault. Abuse is your fault. Trauma is your fault. Because you've been conditioned to believe that you did something to deserve it. So
Right.
that was still very heavy for me. And it took a while before I could even mention it, even the littlest things. But little by little, as I was willing and capable of speaking about what had happened, I found out that I was not alone, that it's not a rare occurrence, that it's actually like the most common. Almost every woman that will experience some type of abuse. And that was a
Yeah.
heartbreaking thing to me, because like nobody deserves that. Nobody should be treated that way. And I was very frustrated with the fact that there were so little resources for women in the personal development industry. It is heavily dominated by men, which is not to say anything negative towards men, but there is a huge void for women that is not like, this is rainbows and sparkles and we're going to live our dreams and, all of that stuff, which
Right.
is completely valid, but there's still a huge gap. And I was really, really angry about that. I was like, it's so unfair. It's so wrong. And I just hit a point where I had the realization that if I'm upset about it, then I need to do something about it, because I can't just be upset and watch it stay that way.
Yeah.
Realized, I looked at myself and I looked at, what did I have? What did I receive? What situations was I able to participate in that led me to be able to heal in a way that most women, they never do. They keep repeating the cycle. And when I realized what it was the personal development. It was that I kind of rebuilt from the bottom. I didn't just fix little things. Because of the personal development, I rebuilt. It was really a brand new foundation to the entire structure that is me. I had to start from the bottom. And I had women around me. I was really lucky that I had met women who were strong enough to be like role models in different ways, that I could look to for inspiration, that I could lean on for support. And those two things was what I realized most women, they don't have, because the shame keeps them silent. So they have no community.
Yeah.
And because we're taught that your own growth, if you go into personal development, again, that's for losers, that's for lame people, so we stay away from that. So it keeps us in that tiny fragile little shell, but we stay in it forever and ever and ever. And if I can do something to change that, then that's my job. If that hand has been reached back towards me, it's my turn now to reach it back to however many women I can reach and pull along with me.
Yeah. So it's crazy because there is a lot more personal development for men, and it's almost coined as kind of like leadership training or, executive training. And there's not as much out there that's kind of a little bit more heart-based, a little bit easier, because women, yes, I function really well under, the masculine version of things, but that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. That doesn't necessarily work for every man. And I feel like there's a huge gap where some men and a lot of women do not get met where they need to be, and they never get that. And you're so right that like we're told that we don't need it, and as women we're told to just, you know, be people pleasers, to kind of take on everything. And so most often we are the ones that have to deal with the narcissistic abuse because we're just being told, just, you know, oh, you must have done something wrong, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
make it okay. I remember always being told as a child, like, oh, you just have to stay quiet and then he won't be angry. No, that doesn't work. It never worked. So let's stop telling little girls that. Let's stop telling, you know, little boys that. Let's make sure that everyone knows how to speak up for themselves. And if they didn't learn it in childhood, then mental health is a real thing, and we are entitled to get all the different kinds of personal development that we can in order to make it so that we are high functioning, healthy adults.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's its entirety of it. I don't believe in men versus women, but I believe that it's two separate dynamics because the conditioning that we receive is different from the conditioning that they receive. And men have to lift each other up in the same way that women have to lift each other up. But there is a middle where there are women like you and I seem to be that are a little bit more quote unquote masculine. And there are men that are a little bit more quote unquote feminine that need that in between, like I don't, everything can't be rainbows and sparkles because that's not reality. And for men, everything can't be, I'm the alpha and, all of that's both ends of the spectrum. The when they're too far away from center, they're just more dysfunction. They really end up just feeding more into the dysfunction of how you're quote unquote supposed to be. And when we can come back towards the center and realize ourselves from the inside out, like that's the beauty of the feminist movement. I know a lot of people have such a negative connotation with feminism. Fuck that. Feminism means that I help women rise. That's all it is. It's not anti-men. It's just I'm for my sisters. I am here to lift them up. I am here to help them build themselves. I am absolutely a feminist. And that is the entire beautiful result of feminism, is that I get rid of all those fucking check boxes. I don't have to check any societal demands. I fulfill what is right for me. And then I'm self-actualized and I'm happy and I have purpose and I matter in the world and I have genuine impact in people's lives. When we find that version of ourselves, that's when we can impact others. Because if we're just checking the little boxes of what we're quote unquote supposed to do, I have nothing to give to you because I haven't really found me. And I'm just giving you some fake version of myself. There's no value in that. There's no happiness. There's no value. And if that's what we're giving to our children, if that's what we're giving to our spouses, like what are we really giving them?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And I love that you said that feminism is just helping other women up, because I feel like we are conditioned as women that there is only a maximum number of seats at the table, and by you taking a seat, then somebody else won't get a seat, and by someone else getting a seat, that means I can't get a seat at the table. And it was never clearer to me than when I worked at Morgan Stanley, um, and my boss was a woman and her boss was a woman, and I when I started there, I realized like I was constantly being held back by them, and like being told, like I was literally told, you're nothing. That's what my boss said to me. You're nothing here. And I went to this, we had like a women's committee, and my mentor was the head of the women's committee, and she just said to me like, yeah, they're living in this mentality where there's already too many women at the head of the table, and they can't let you in either.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, I had to leave and start my own business. I was like, this is just, I left. I didn't initially start my own business. I went to somewhere else, and then eventually I started my own business because I don't want to deal with that kind of mentality. And I have made sure that the rest of my career, I am not dealing with that kind of mentality. I don't buy into that mentality because I view all women, as my support system, as the
Mm-hmm.
people that are going to come up with me and that I'm going to help up and they're going to help me up. And one of the biggest things I did for a while, and I'm still on it, I started this nonprofit with a few friends called Ladies of Business Rockaway Beach, and now we've expanded. So now we're rebranding as Rockaway Creates, and so we're also including men and Jewish, gender fluid, and everyone. But it really just started as like a support system. Before we
Mm-hmm.
were a legal nonprofit, we were just a group of women that met at somebody's house to talk, and we literally had where you introduced yourself, you told everybody what you did, and you asked for help and offered help. And it was just we met every single month, once a month, and like I've been doing that for many, many years now. So we need that support. It's funny because so that was my support system in New York, and I've since moved to Arizona, and I'm still in, I'm still part of that network, right? And I'm still going to the monthly meetings. Now it's just on Zoom when I go. But I've been desperately trying to recreate that in Arizona because it's so few and far between.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such a
We are just
beautiful
not,
thing.
yeah,
Yeah, we're really
sorry.
not. I think there's a slight delay in one of our internets.
Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful thing because one of the things that our culture, our in the U.S. that we really have lost is community, and it's completely competition now. We are really taught to look at everyone as competition. Like you can't, and I was heavily, this was a big part of my insecurity. I would say, where are we, 22, even 5 years ago, I was absolutely that woman. I didn't know it. I had no idea. I thought I was completely a feminist, but my idea of feminism was, this narrow. And I was absolutely like, I'm the strong woman. I'm the powerful woman. I am, which meant that you can't be, or you can be, but not as much as me, because I need to be the strong woman. I need to be the one that does this. I need to be the one that, has physical strength. I'm the one that goes to the gym. And like I think back and the potential community that I lost out on because I was so dismissive of other women if they weren't the same kind of woman as me, if they weren't the same kind of strong as me, if they weren't the same kind of impressive as me. I was dismissive because of the way that, we get conditioned to be. And I think about like how many years before that could I have had support, and I could have had deep, beautiful relationships with other women and just people who were like-minded. But because I was conditioned to think no, because if I let them near me, they're just going to they'll stab me in the back, or they'll try to usurp me, or
Yeah.
they'll dim my light so that theirs can shine. And like, man, that's such a really sad way to go through with life and with business and with just everything, without believing in the value of community and the goodness of people. You really isolate yourself even further than we already are because of the way that our lifestyles are.
Yeah. Did you build your support system?
So when I got divorced from my ex, I joined a gym. I joined the YMCA because my kids were just turning 5 and 7, so I had no income. And at the YMCA, my monthly membership was $22, and it had child watch and it had child programs. And I was like, this is a no brainer. And it makes me really sad when I hear people who, not that there isn't any validity whatsoever, but when people say that the gym culture is toxic, it makes me so sad for them, because every person of value in my life, every deep relationship, until I started joining masterminds and other networks like that to specifically look for like-minded people, every single person who was supportive, who was loving, who is still in my life today, came from the gym, because it was a community of people who, health is important to them. I met other moms, their kids played with my kids, and we stayed friends and we all did things together. And that was my first community that was my community. It wasn't a community that I was in because of my parents. It wasn't a community that I was in because of my job or because of my husband. It was mine. And those relationships are still some of the most valuable relationships, some of the deepest relationships in my life today. And then, of course, as I got into personal development, I found networks of people that are heavily invested in themselves and in growing. And most of them are business minded, of course, by now, but it's the same thing, because they have similar interests, because they think similarly. They're supportive of me because I want to grow in the same ways that they want to grow. And as I meet new people, I support them because I know that they want to grow in the ways that I've grown. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what community is supposed to be.
Yeah, I'm so curious. Do you think that the gym being the YMCA is different than, because most people go to like Planet Fitness or like a gym like that. And do you think that the YMCA is a better type of community feeling, and that's just where you built your community, or have you tried other gyms and been able to build that same support system?
Well, I've been to a lot of gyms now. Back then, that was the only gym I had ever been to. And it's very much dependent on the culture in that particular gym. So it starts from the corporate level or the, small business owner level down, because it's the culture that person, the owner or the manager, creates with the staff, who then creates it with their Group X classes or with their the people that come in on the gym floor. It really starts from the top down. At that particular Y, we are very in Hawaiian we say ohana. We're very ohana based, which means family.
Mm-hmm.
So the community is tight there. I have absolutely been to gyms which are like, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. And they're not negative. I would not say they were negative. I've been fortunate that I've never experienced, that kind of shit that you see on YouTube where people act a fool.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that I've not experienced that in any of the gyms that I've gone to. There's been some borderline people. There's definitely some gyms that are a little bit more of a meat market. And you get heavily looked up and down, and it's where people meet each other, which again, if they have similar interests, it's just as valid as going to a bar or something like that. But if that's not your thing, which it was not my thing, I didn't love it. But it's, I think, like any other business, it really depends on what is the culture that they build within the staff to spread into the community of that gym.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I have been to like other gyms, like, I don't know, Lifetime and other like big corporate gyms, and didn't feel the sense of community. But there was one gym, it this was before COVID, but it was called Crom, and it was a CrossFit gym, and I had that same feeling where like it didn't matter if you were in the shred class with them or you were off on your own with a trainer. Like, everybody was, making sure like that everybody else was doing well, and like congratulating each other's wins and like, oh my God, you know, it was a CrossFit gym. So like, you remember when you came, like for me, like I remember when I came in and all I could do was like a PVC pipe. And then I'm like deadlifting 75 pounds and like people are cheering me on. And like that whole progression, like it's all these people who have seen you go through all of it and have supported you through all of it. So, and that was a small grown CrossFit and martial arts gym. And I really like that. The vibe there was a vibe that I haven't experienced anywhere else.
I think there's definitely something to be said between a corporate gym, like a 24-hour fitness or Lifetime Fitness or something like that, versus a small gym, because a small gym, it just tends to be a tighter community. Like, you know, a gym that's got 15,000 members versus a gym that's got, you know, maybe 5,000 members. It's going to be tighter. But also, I mean, if you want that community, like for anybody who's listening and they're thinking about that and they're like, I wish that was at my gym, be the one. Be the community, be the one that like reaches out and says, hey man, I see you every morning at, you know, like we're the early crew, 5 a.m. Or I see you, you know, you're always in the back row at that class that I go to. Because people are so much more receptive to human contact that like we don't even realize it. Like they're afraid to reach out and be the contact. But man, you reach out to them and they are so ready and waiting to have community, to have interaction, to have like a person recognize them, especially after coming out of the pandemic. And a lot of people, I mean, there are still places that are just opening up now. People are desperate for human interaction, and you can be it.
Yeah, it's crazy that you say like things are just opening up now, because I think I saw today, I'm currently in New York. I'm at my mother's house, so that's why I have this like crazy background on and I keep disappearing partially because like I am in what was my old bedroom at one point, and there's just like a total craziness behind me because it became like a storage room for all of my siblings, and there's 6 of us and everybody's got kids, and so like it's just a storage room basically behind me with a bed. But I'm here in New York and I just saw on the news that they're talking about mask mandates again, and maybe, you know, in New York and New Jersey, because a lot of people are getting sick again. So yeah, like we like let's get that human connection in because we understand now how quickly that can be taken away from us. And I mean, we've been doing Zoom for a long time and I still do Zoom, but it's not the same.
It's really not. Like seeing a face and hearing the voice at the same time is better than just a phone call, but it's not the same as just physical proximity to a person. Like, you know, you have energy, they have energy. There's an energy exchange that is so healthy for us that we lose when we can't be in the even if you never talk to people, going to the store. You know, if you've been locked in the house for a week, right? Say you've had a cold and you've been locked in the house, and then you get out and you just go walk around freaking the Costco or Walmart or something. There's so much that it does for you to just go be around people. And it's undeniable, and it's horrible to lose that.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It was so missing. Like it's one of the biggest things. I mean, in Arizona, where I live now, things are so far away and I work from home and I don't have the same support system that I had in New York. And it's one of the biggest things that I feel like I'm missing. And I'm constantly, you know, looking for that additional human connection. So, I mean, I do a lot of, I've been doing more and more lately. I don't know if you've heard of like girlfriend groups. Different cities have girlfriend groups. So I've joined a couple of those and been going to things like that. And I'm vegan, so I'm in a vegan group and I've met a lot of people like that. And regularly go to farmers markets just so I can like be around people and like not only like support small businesses, which I love doing, and get healthy food, but also just to like be in that environment and be around people again and, you know, just have, you know, kind of build that community.
Mm-hmm. In the groups that I'm in, I am very intentional about constantly. I reach out to just, we don't know each other. I know you don't know me. I don't know you, but we're in this group together. I'm reaching out to you. I'd like to meet you. I'd like to know you. I'd like to just, even if we never talk again after this, I'd like to share energy with you for an hour. Very, very, and you have to be really intentional about it because it's really easy not to. It's really easy just to be like, oh yeah, I recognize that name. And, you know, you keep scrolling or whatever, but it makes a big difference, especially when you realize that everybody knows something you don't know. Everybody has some kind of value and they probably don't recognize it, especially if it's a thing that they're accustomed to. It doesn't seem valuable. It's just normal to them. But just in having that exchange, there's so many times that like we have nothing in common. We'll probably never talk again, but let's just chat for this, 20, 30, 40 minutes. So many times that I've said something that to me sounds offhand, or they've said something that's just a very like a little factoid, a thing that means nothing to them. But the exchange right there was like a light bulb going off, or just a deep realization that if we had never connected, those moments wouldn't have happened. That realization would have never happened. That knowledge would have never been exchanged. And there's so much inside of that is the crux of your growth is really in things that you don't know now, but you don't know them. Those different levels of consciousness, there is a million things that you don't know. And until you have interactions that are new, listening to new music, going to new places, talking to new people, things that spark growth in your brain, you lose all of that.
Yeah, and I actually do want to say one thing also, as much as like I feel like this is for me personally, I don't know if it is for you as well. As much as like I love exchanging energy, I'm also very conscious of like what my gut says about a person because sometimes it's very draining with like certain energies like they just don't mesh well with you, and I feel like especially as women we are told not to listen to that and to just be nice to everyone and give everyone time and like be extra giving of ourselves and not kind of listen to that voice in your head or that feeling in your body or like that gut instinct that you have. Always listen to that gut instinct. If something feels off, it feels off for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you get yourself into a lot of bad situations. I don't know if you felt it, but I've also been in abusive relationships, and it was always when I ignored that feeling in the pit of my stomach, then I was abused.
Yeah.
And as long as I, I will tell you, people, when I was 19, nobody thought that I could do this, but when I was 19, I went by myself. I bought a one-way ticket to South America and traveled for 6 months on my own. And everybody was just like, oh, you're going to be back in 2 weeks. My whole family took bets, right? And the longest was 2 weeks of how long I was going to last. And the thing that kept me through there, and like a lot of people got mugged, a lot of people, like things happened. I was a woman traveling alone. It didn't happen to me because in every situation I listened to my gut, and it really trained me. Like if something feels off, walk away. You don't have to be there. You don't need to be in this space. The one like bad thing that happened to me was my hostel room got robbed, but I wasn't there, So, but every other situation, like I've been in so many crazy situations where even later in life, I went to Brazil during Carnival. I was in Rio, and I traveled on the subways, and and everybody was like, you don't speak Portuguese and you're a woman traveling by yourself and you still took a subway. Like, I'm Brazilian and I don't take a subway there. I'm like, yeah, I still take subways and I still go everywhere because I'm listening to my gut. If something feels off, I'm getting off or I'm
Mhm.
moving to another car. Like, I'm not waiting to see what that feeling meant, I'm just getting out of there, and if nothing happens, awesome. And if it does happen, then I'm out of there already anyway.
Yeah.
So as you're going and like creating these support systems and as you're reaching out to people to share energy, just be like super mindful of what's going on in your body and how you're reacting, because we can sense predators.
Hmm. I think people dismiss that intuition, but and I will say that the more you interact with people, the more you will develop that too, because
Yeah.
that intuition, like, it's not some psychic thing, it's not a sixth sense, it's your subconscious mind picking up on things and saying, hey, I see something, let me trip your awareness, let me pay attention to this. And because we are conditioned, like you said, to kind of I can see everything in hindsight. There were red flags with my the abusive ex that I kept writing off. He didn't mean that. It wasn't this. It wasn't that. I dismissed all of them. And the more that you interact with people, the more you will learn to pick up on those things and become very aware of them. And like, never dismiss yourself. That's my one of the number one things that I work on with my clients is, what do you feel in that moment when that thing happened? What did you feel in that moment? Because if you felt anxiety, if you thought to yourself, I shouldn't do this, that was your subconscious mind picking up on things that you were consciously overlooking. And it was
Yeah.
trying to like flick that little light switch on the wall and say, hey, let's bring this into the light. Let's pay attention to it. And I think now that you mentioned that, I think there's going to be a big lack in that ability coming out of these 2 years, because a lot of people, especially not younger kids, but younger adults who were coming out of childhood and teenagehood and didn't have normal interactions for 2 years, they are missing that entire 2 years of development of learning how to read body language, facial language, with all of that covered up, you
Yeah.
know, all of that stuff. My gosh, yeah. Yeah. Also, freaking awesome that
Yeah.
you went to
Do you have
Rio.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure I will be back there again, but it was amazing. Carnival is amazing. I mean, I don't know what it's like now in this like post-pandemic world, if it's anything like what it was then, but yeah, the I'm a big proponent of traveling as much as you possibly can, and like if you are able to see as much of the world as you can, because it gives you a different perspective on everything. And it I come at this also. So what I do full time is I own a virtual CFO company and I do financial wellness coaching. And one of the biggest things that I always tell my clients is invest in experiences.
Yes. You'll
They
never
last.
regret. Never regret them.
No, you'll never regret going on a vacation. You will never regret having a crazy experience. You will never regret going to, see that show or going to the botanical gardens with your family. Like, those are the things you'll never regret. You will regret buying that electronic that is going to be obsolete in 2 months, you know?
Yes. I want to expand on that because that's such a big thing right now, because Christmas is on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And so many moms, and I'm sure dads too, but I speak to moms because I'm a mom, so much pressure to provide things. Almost
Mm-hmm.
everything that I've ever given to my children, it's gone. It's
Yep.
gone. And most of it they can't remember. There are a few things that are like, you know, that doll or that toy. But that's like, maybe you count that on two hands. Over the last, because my daughter just turned 20, my son's about to turn 18, that's a lot of years of stuff. And this is about all they can remember in terms of material goods. They had a few favorite outfits, a few favorite toys, and that's it. The memories that I created with them, the times that I spent with them, even if they can't remember the memories, they can't, I mean, obviously they can't remember all of the things that they did, but giving them a toy versus spending a day doing something, whatever it is, a thing that they love, a thing that you love, that interaction, that time spent together contributes to the person that they are. And if they can have the memory of it, if they get to remember it all the way into adulthood, that's even better. But the times that you spent together, whether they're remembered or not, contribute to who they are and how they feel and how loved they feel and how they feel about you, how they see each other if you have more than one kid, how they see themselves. All of it's invaluable, and you can't, no matter how much you try, you can't replace that by giving them more shit.
No, definitely not. And we did not grow up wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. If anything, like the opposite side of the spectrum. But one of the things I will say, and at the time, maybe as a child, like I didn't understand it, but as an adult, I completely understand it. Like I didn't have a lot of toys. We didn't get presents. I was just laughing about it because with my mom, I'm Israeli, and like for Hanukkah, so I'm Jewish and Israeli, and for Hanukkah, like it's not a thing for Israelis to give gifts on Hanukkah. That's like a thing that, because children in America have Christmas, and so Jewish children feel left out, they started giving like, oh, you won't get, one gift on Christmas, you get 8 days of gifts. Like that's not really a thing, like that was not a thing for like kids in Israel. And when we came to America, that was not a thing. So we did not get gifts. I really didn't get gifts for my birthday or other stuff. We didn't get stuff, but we did get to go places. Like every single year we went back and forth to Israel, or my mother loves Disney. We went to Disney World. We would drive down to Disney World. We had a camper van, not a camper van, what are they called? The big ones.
Like a RV?
RV. We had like a small RV, and we would take that places. We would go to Lake George, we'd go here, we'd go there. We'd always be in, the RV going somewhere. And that taught me a different way of looking at things, a different way of looking at life. Like material things were never important to me. Mm-hmm. I always wanted to experience new things, see new places, and those were the things that stuck with me. I have all, you say like your kids don't necessarily have the memories. I can tell you, like I have memories starting at like 4 or 5 years old of places I've been. I can literally, when I think of certain things, I remember how I felt in that moment, like I remember skipping across the dance floor in Israel at 5 years old, and my like hair up halfway. Like I can still remember that feeling. And I do not have that feeling with any material item that I've ever received.
Yeah. That's such, if we could package that knowledge and just give it to like every parent across the country, because when they were younger, I felt bad about this, right? Because I was a different woman, I was a different mom. My kids didn't get a lot. They're both of their birthdays are in December, so they got stuff maybe in the rest of the year, like if they needed it. Of course, they would get clothes as they grew, but they only got presents once a year. So I felt a little bit bad about that when they were young. But now I can look back and I'm like, they didn't expect to get toys all year long. They didn't expect to get things all year long. They did not get that expectation of stuff being important. And single mother, they didn't get a lot of stuff in general. And
Yeah.
and I felt bad about that when they were young, but like my kids they can go without a lot of things. They know how to make things last. Like the lessons that my generation got because we grew up kind of poor, they were able to get it because we weren't poor, but buying crap was not a high priority in comparison to doing things with them. And now I look back and I'm like, thank God that I made those little choices, because I felt bad for them at the time, but there's not a single regret that I have now. There's not one moment, one vacation, one trip, one event that we did together that I regret.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just you can't, it's immeasurable what it's worth.
Yeah, and I always say your biggest resource is your resourcefulness,
Hmm.
right? To be able to make something out of what you already have or make something out of nothing, like it's a huge life skill that I can see the difference between my husband and I, between my friends and I. Like I'll tell you one, like a stupid crazy thing, but the I in Arizona, so I only expected to stay there for 6 months. So I bought kind of like this beater Jeep, this like really old 2004 Jeep that I thought, I'm gonna have it for 6 months and then I'm gonna donate it. It's now 2 years later and I still have this Jeep, but the lock on the back window broke. Now everybody else is like, oh my god, now what are you gonna do? Like, how are you gonna drive around with that? I like first I took a bungee. I was like, we got a bungee cord. I bungee cord that shit until until it stopped being like elastic anymore. And
Hmm.
then I was like, all right, what's next? I got some rope and I roped, I tied it with rope and it was riding around for a while like that. And then we were like, oh, but now we can't open and close it. We can't use it as easily. I found a giant clip, a giant metal clip that I already had for like my convention stuff. Boom. And now it like works perfectly. But those kind of things that everybody else was like, oh, like I went to a place and they wanted like $600 to fix it. And I was like, I bought this car for $4,000. Like, I'm not fixing like the back window for 600. Like, it's just not worth it right now.
Hmm.
Um, and I was able to like fix it with a $5 clip, you know? So those kind of things, like if you don't grow up like that, or if you're not taught to like think outside of the box, I feel like even when I have my kids and they will have more than I had growing up, but I'm still going to try to impart that kind of knowledge. Like we would reupholster things. Like my mother has lots of, chairs. When she had chairs and the seat cushions weren't looking good anymore, we bought fabric, got a staple, borrowed somebody's staple gun and reupholstered the chair. Those kind of things I still want to do with my kids because I want them to be able to like I want you to be able to function no matter where I throw you in life. And that's one of the things that I firmly have always believed about myself. Like, you can throw me anywhere in the middle of nowhere, I will figure it out.
Yes.
And that kind of feeling, that kind of like self awareness and self esteem only grows with like being put into situations and like having to rely on being innovative.
Yep. I think there's a massive amount of quality and durability that's been lost in, I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, in the products that we buy. They're no longer made in a way that you can have them forever. They're really made to be thrown away. I have my mom's in the 70s. If you look up like Oster Kitchen Center, it was this all in one, and it had like a mixer. And if you take the thing off, then it was a blender. And if you change that thing to the other thing, then it was one of those slicer. Like it did a bajillion things, and
Yeah.
it was built to last forever. And I have it. I still have it. because it's better than I bought my daughter loves to bake, so I had bought her, the KitchenAid mixer. And I used it a couple of times. I'm like, I don't like this. This is not like the Oster. Like, I went back to my mom's house and I dug all her stuff out. I was like, I want the Oster. But I don't want anything else. And it's like, it's literally probably 50 years old, getting close to. Everything works. It could probably, the motor could use some, like, I'm thinking to take it to, like, I don't know, like a sewing machine shop or something where they, upkeep the motor, because it could probably use a little something. But that thing's going to last until I die. And it's going to work all the pieces. Nothing has fallen apart because it just crumbles. Whereas if you buy things now, they're not made in a way that you can have them forever. And I can't stand to be wasteful. I can't stand things that I know are going to end up in the dump. I really want things that are, first of all, I want quality to begin with. Like, if I spend my money on something, I want to purchase quality. I don't want to purchase something that is fancy garbage, really. Because that's the way, like, things were still quality when we were growing up. Like, you could still buy good things that were going to last you. And like, that was a selling feature. You could maintain it. You could repair it. You could do all of these things. And it was going to be like a piece that you handed down to your kids or whatever. And now everything is just, it's going to last for 1 year and then you can throw it away and buy another one. And I hate the thought of the landfills filling up with stuff that could have just been made a little bit better and still be inside of people's homes or in a donation center or being reused or being, I have such, like, the hippie in me is, I hate cheap crap. I really hate it.
Yeah. I feel the same way. Like, all of the clothes that I buy, I make sure that I buy vintage first, right? Like, I want somebody's loved clothing. Like, I don't want like cheap fast fashion. I just don't want it. And when you said about the kitchen appliances, I literally am using a 30-plus year old KitchenAid that I refuse to buy a new one because, like, this one is so good and, like, it still runs perfectly. Why would I get another one? And every time I pass by it in Costco or something else, I'm like, oh, I would really like a blue KitchenAid and maybe a different color. And then I'm like, who am I kidding? I am never going to use that KitchenAid. Like, I'm going to continue to use my tried and true KitchenAid with all of its different, handles and, like, the things on top. I have it all. And it was passed down from my older sister.
That stuff is like, I mean, it's just like, why would you want anything that's garbagey? Like, it looks pretty, but only for a little bit. Like, even cars aren't made the same today. Like, even Toyotas are in less than 5 to 6 years. Like, the paint is coming off and like, I don't, it irks my soul. Like, I don't want cheaply made shit. I want quality. I would rather have a thing that lasts for, like, I drive a Honda Pilot because I'm fond. In the islands, we call them beater cars.
Yeah.
Which means I don't care if I take it to the beach and it gets sandy. I don't care if I take it hiking and it gets muddy. But that car, all the pieces work. Everything's functional. All the windows work. And I've had brand new cars that are like, fuck, I bought this 2 years ago and this doesn't work and this doesn't work. And I, like, it's the reliability. It's I can't count on something if I know it's garbage, if I'm afraid it's going to fall apart. Just like people, like, you want quality in your life.
Yep.
You want to be quality. You want to have quality. Quality makes your life better. And I just can't get with the whole disposable. Again, the hippie in me is like, no.
I know. It's crazy when you said that about people. I was reminded of, okay, so there's this thing in Fight Club where they say, like, single serving people. And I have always said, like, I don't want single serving friends, right? I want somebody that's going to be there that I can count on. If that means that my circle is smaller, but that it's quality people and it's not just like tons of single serving people in my life, that is something that I 100% prefer over having like a huge, a huge network of acquaintances.
Yeah, I think people don't realize, like I've had this discussion so many times, and I think I was blessed that it was easier for me because I was an army brat. And this was there was no social media, there was not even email. Like once you moved, you lost those people. That's just the way it was. So I was accustomed to letting people go. That's not a hard thing for me to do because that was my whole lifestyle. But so many people grow up thinking that they're supposed to have all these friends because that's what it looks like, in TV and in the movies. And like, that's just not reality. Like you can go wide or you can go deep. And when you go deep and you have those really quality friends, there's not going to be 10 and 15 and 20 of them. You'll have 10 and 15 and 20 acquaintances. You'll have people that will like to do certain things with you or who will be in certain parts of your life because you have a shared hobby or, pastime or something. But the people who are like really deep in your life, if you have 3, I think you're lucky because more often than not, we have 1 or 2. And the thought that they're failing at having more people drags people down way farther than having few people could ever drag you down. Because when you have a whole lot of shallow people, like you really got nothing.
You still feel alone.
Yes.
You could be in a crowd of people and still feel completely alone. And then when you have those quality people, you could just have, you're just surrounded by 2 or 3 people or 5 people, and you feel like the room is completely filled.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's an entirely different dynamic of life.
Yeah. So it's really just like looking for your network, looking for the people that really that you really mesh with well, that lift you up. Because I think that sometimes we focus on, a lot of times, especially I feel like as women, we want to feel like we're better than our friends instead of like looking for people that we lift each other up. And so I really focus on finding people that I feel lift me up all the time and that I can lift them up all the time and that we can be a real support system for each other.
I think it's a cliched saying, but it's very, very true. If you are always the smartest person in the room, you are never in a place where you can learn and grow.
Yeah.
The biggest fish in a fishbowl can't ever get any bigger.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are willing to jump out of that fishbowl and maybe enter the ocean where you're the tiny little guppy, it's a little scary, especially if you were the big fish. But when you jump into such a larger environment where there are people who are so much farther ahead, then there's so much more potential that you have for yourself. That growth can't be contained by a little glass bowl unless you allow it to be.
Yeah. So we're a little bit past an hour. I want to tell people how to reach out to you. So how do you work with people and how do they get in touch with you?
They, all my different social medias are all on my website. There's also a contact form there. If they want to just have like a little call, I do 15-minute calls just to kind of get to know you a little, explore where you're at, see if if the thing that you want to work on is something that my skill set will lend to, because I definitely never want to spend my time with somebody who I can't actually help. I don't feel good about that. And I don't want my name attached to poor results. So you can contact me. You can find my social media. It's Kekuak. So it's my name, Kekua, Kekuak. And again, all my links are there. There's a contact form. You can also contact me on any of the social media platforms if you should, follow to one of those and you see content that feels right with you. Feel free to message me there as well.
Great. And do you have a last nugget of wisdom that you want to share?
I like to tell people, I want you to think about that thing. And that thing is different for everybody. But when you just, what's that thing? You're not doing it right now. You used to, and you miss it, or you haven't tried it yet because you've been afraid. For whatever reason, there's that thing. Fucking do it. Like you are worth and you deserve everything that you're willing to work for. And if you go for it, you can make it happen. It's not going to happen like it does on social media where people seem to explode overnight and they become experts at whatever the thing is. But there's nothing that you can't figure out. Go after that thing, find the thing, and everything is figure outable. Go the fuck after it.
I love that. And I love that we're ending on that. Yes, go do that thing. And if you want to reach out to Kekua, please do so. I will be sharing all of her links, so look out for those. As always, you can reach me at Galit Speaks on all the social media platforms. And if you want to sign up for my mailing list, it also will send you a link to this. And like, subscribe, share, make sure that this gets out to whoever needs to see it. Thank you so much for being here, Kekua. I really, really, really appreciate it. This was amazing.
I've loved it. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great night, everyone. And I'll see you next week for another episode of Galit Speaks. Bye.